What's up guys, my name is Brandon and today we're going to be doing a speed test between the brand new 2018 iPad Pro 12.9 inch and the brand new iPhone XS Max. So these are two of the most popular and the most powerful Apple devices released in 2018. So it's going to be really interesting to put these two up against each other head to head because they both have the A12 chip. However, the iPad Pro has the A12X chip. So it is going to be a little bit faster most likely than the iPhone XS Max, but this test is all about seeing just how much faster it actually is. So of course, like always in my speed tests, we're going to be doing boot up tests, app launching tests, web browsing tests, and more. And of course, before we get to the boot up section of this test, let's go ahead and lay down the specs for each device. So the iPhone XS Max here on the left is rocking Apple's A12 Bionic chip with 4GB of RAM. And of course, the iPad Pro is rocking Apple's A12X Bionic chip with 4GB of RAM. This is the 64GB variant, so this is 64GB, this is 256GB. And just a quick note, there is a faster iPad Pro than this. The 1TB model comes with 6GB of RAM, so 2 extra gigabytes of RAM on the 1TB model. All right, so let's go ahead and get things started with a boot up test. So we're going to shut both of these down and then go ahead and boot them up and see which one boots up first. All right, so both devices are completely shut down. Let's go ahead and power them up in 3, 2, 1. So we only had to tap it on the iPhone, but we have to hold it here on the iPad, but it looked like we still got the Apple logo first on the iPad Pro. Let's go ahead and see which one gets to the lock screen first. We have the big jumbo-sized Apple logo there on the iPad Pro. I'm probably expecting this one to beat the iPhone, but we'll see. Still waiting, and yes, the iPad Pro by just about a second, a little bit less than a second. So not a huge difference there in the boot up, and you saw that the screen actually went dim before the iPhone for whatever reason. Let me go ahead and flip the orientation here of the iPad, and we're going to go ahead and unlock these devices. So before we do any kind of benchmark testing, let's go ahead and do an app launching test first, and we're going to start off, like always, with games. So we're going to go ahead and close out of every application on both devices. All right, so we have all applications closed, and we're going to go ahead and start off with Galaxy on Fire 3. We're going to open them both at the same time in 3, 2, 1. Press at the exact same time. Let's see which one loads up first. So we got a visual first on the iPhone. And it's looking like the iPhone XS Max is beating the iPad Pro so far. And yes, it's looking like so it looked like the iPhone is still winning. Even after the download, they both had to download the update, and the iPhone XS Max is outperforming the iPad Pro here, which is actually pretty surprising. I expected the iPhone to win. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the sound off, but you can see that the iPhone clearly won the first test there with Galaxy on Fire 3. So let's go ahead and try PUBG. Let's go ahead and find PUBG on both in 3, 2, 1. And this I'm expecting the iPad Pro to win in, but I don't know. I mean, I expected to win the first one as well. So it's looking about even right now, neck and neck. Checking for update on both. We don't have to download an update on either one. And it looks like the iPad Pro is winning, maybe. Wow, that was very close. That was pretty much identical. And I actually played my first game of PUBG last night on the iPad Pro, and I dropped 16 kills and got the victory. I posted that over on Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, go ahead and follow me over there. We're gonna go ahead and start a match and see which one plays better in the actual game. And the win for this one, I'm expecting to go to the iPad Pro just because I played on it last night and I remember how it played on the iPhone. You could just see so much more of the map. You just see so much more real estate. You have so much more room to do things on the iPad, which is just fantastic for a game like PUBG, and it's going to be the same with Fortnite as well. So let's go ahead and move on both, and you can see it's a lot more smooth on the iPad as well. Just things seem to be, like you see how it's a little bit stuttery there on the iPhone. The iPad doesn't really have any stutter at all, and this is the first thing I noticed last night when I was actually playing a game was the lack of stutter, which is really nice. And you can just see the big difference in actual, real estate on the screen for a game like this. It's really awesome. The game experience overall on the iPad is just really impressive. You can see that little stutter there on the iPhone. It's nothing major and it doesn't really happen too often, but you will notice it, especially after playing on an iPad. All right, so we're going to jump out of the plane at the same time on both devices, and we're going to see if there's any kind of difference at all, whether that's stutter, whether that's just anything at all. So let's go ahead and click on jump in 3, 2, 1. And you can see it's pretty much about the same. Everything just looks smoother on the iPad. It just looks like a more of an actual gaming experience, like it's on maybe even a console or something like that, like the Nintendo Switch or something. And you can see the map is actually rendering quicker on the iPad as well. So I'm definitely going to give the victory here to the iPad Pro. The overall gaming experience is just so much better in pretty much every single application. Now let's go ahead and launch Asphalt 9 in 3, 2, 1. Press at the exact same time, but it did load up first. Looked like the animation was a little bit quicker on the iPhone. Looks like the iPhone is a little bit ahead here as well. They're pretty neck and neck, but you will notice a slight advantage to the iPhone. See if it continues after this loading screen. And yes, the iPhone won once again over the iPad Pro. Super interesting result here. I definitely did not expect this so far. So the iPhone is outperforming the iPad so far 2-1. Now let's go into iMovie and export a 4K video and see which one can export video faster. So we're gonna go ahead and create a new project. We're gonna do movie on both, and we're gonna go down and select the same exact video. So we're gonna select this video right here. It's a 1-minute video shot in 4K at 60 FPS. Let's click create movie at the bottom on both. Actually have to download it from iCloud here. I shot the video on this iPhone, so I will have to download it from iCloud here on the iPad. All right, so you can see we have the exact same video here on both. Just want to show that Lambo flyby real quick. So let's go ahead and click on done on both of these, and let's go ahead and export this. So we're going to go to export on both. We're going to do save video on both, and we're going to select 4K at the same time in 3, 2, 1. So we press it at the exact same time. Let's see which one can actually export this movie first. Now again, this video was shot, the video that we're using for this project was shot on the iPhone XS Max in 4K at 60 FPS. So let's see which one can win. They look very, very close at this point. So I'll be back when it gets closer to the end so you can see which one wins. All right, so we're getting down near the end here, and you can see the iPad Pro is definitely gonna win the exporting test here. That A12X chip is just a beast. So you can see exporting video officially done, and it's going to be at least 5 to 10 seconds late on the iPhone XS Max. So for video exporting, importing, anything to do with video, the iPad's definitely going to be far superior to something like the iPhone XS Max. So yeah, that was a good at least 10 seconds that the iPad Pro won there. All right, so now let's try out some social media applications, and we're going to start, of course, with Twitter in 3, 2, 1. Again, it launched first on the iPhone. We got the animation a little bit quicker there on the iPhone. And yes, the iPhone did load up faster, but actually it looked like the iPad may have loaded up the notifications first. I saw the notifications there on the iPad before I did on the iPhone. We'll have to double check that and maybe watch it in slow-mo, but I think I saw the notifications first on the iPad, but we're going to give that one to the iPhone regardless. Now let's do Amazon in 3, 2, 1. And Amazon is first on the iPad Pro. Let's do Amazon Prime Video in 3, 2, 1. And this one's going to go to, looks like the iPad. Yes, the iPad Pro by at least a second there over the iPhone XS Max. Let's go ahead and do shortcuts. And the animation was quicker on the iPhone, but the iPad beat the iPhone once again. Let's go into the camera. And we got the square first on the iPhone there. Let's go to the news application in 3, 2, 1. The animation once again quicker on the iPhone, and we loaded up content it looked like before the iPad, but the iPad did have to load up a lot more content than the iPhone did. So kind of a tie there. I mean, the iPhone technically won, but the iPad had to load up a lot more content. So we're going to call that one a draw. Let's go into Reddit. Once again, the animation quicker on the iPhone for some reason, but the iPad loaded up first, definitely by at least a second there. So something I always like to test is in Twitter, I like to be able to pull up the share sheet and see which one wins. So let's go ahead and go to this tweet here. And we're going to click on the share button here and see which one can actually pull up the share sheet first. In 3, 2, 1. And the iPad definitely won there over the iPhone. We didn't even have an animation, so I really like how quick the share sheet is here on the iPad. It definitely beat the iPhone there. All right, so now let's go ahead and test out the RAM management. So both of these have 4 gigabytes of RAM, so we'll see if one is better than the other as far as relaunching and not relaunching applications. So let's start by going back to Galaxy on Fire 3. And no relaunch on either one, it doesn't look like. We're kind of frozen here on the iPhone, but it looks like we did not have a reload here on the iPad, and we're still kind of frozen on the iPhone. Not really sure what's going on. So yes, I guess we did have a relaunch. Yeah, so we did have a relaunch there on the iPhone, and for some reason my music started playing. So we did have a relaunch on the iPhone, not on the iPad for Galaxy on Fire 3. Now let's go into PUBG in 3, 2, 1. And once again, we have a relaunch on the iPhone, but not on the iPad. So RAM is looking like it's going to be much better here on the iPad versus the iPhone. And again, this isn't even the 6 gigabyte model. So this is only the 4 gigabyte of RAM model of iPad, but it still is beating out the iPhone XS Max. Let's go to Asphalt 9. And no relaunch on either one. Well, yes, we do have a relaunch on both, it looked like. It was kind of a mini relaunch, though. It didn't fully relaunch the application. Let's go to Prime Video. And we have a relaunch on both of these, but it looked like the iPad may have loaded up first there. It was pretty close. Let's go to iMovie, and we did not have a relaunch on either. Let's do Amazon, and no relaunch on either one there either. So looks like the RAM management is definitely going to go to the iPad here. It seems to not really relaunch applications very often, at least not as often as it does on the iPhone. And I really have noticed this throughout my experience with the iPad. It seems to just keep everything open in the background, which is really nice. I can't imagine how great the 6GB of RAM model is. Again, that only comes with the 1TB of storage model of the new iPad Pro. So yeah, very impressive results here from the iPad Pro. Let's go ahead and do a Safari web browser test. So let's go ahead to producthunt.com in 3, 2, 1. Press at the exact same time there, and we got a load first on the iPad. We got content first, but it looked like it fully loaded on the iPhone first. Once again, this is another case of loading a lot more content on the iPad though. So it's really hard to say which device actually won because we saw content technically first on the iPad, but the iPhone fully loaded up this little bit of content that it had before the iPad fully loaded. Let's go to techcrunch.com in 3, 2, 1. Press at the exact same time, and we loaded up first here on the iPhone. Let's go to apple.com. Same time once again, and that was pretty close. I'm not really sure which one won. It looked like the iPhone may have won there, but once again, we do have a different view on the iPad versus the iPhone, so it's really hard to determine an actual winner here for web browsing because the experience is just so much different on both. So we're gonna just call this a draw. So now we're gonna go ahead and run a Wi-Fi speed test. We are on the same network, so I'm gonna go ahead and run it here on the iPhone first. I always like to do a Wi-Fi speed test just to see if we can get better speeds on one device over the other. So you can see there we got a 97.5 upload and about a close to 6 upload here on the iPhone XS Max. So yes, a 5.76. Now let's go ahead and run it here on the iPad Pro. And you can already tell that we are getting faster speeds on the iPad Pro. We're getting about 150 to 160, so 156.3 on the download, and it looks like the upload is going to be about the same. It's maybe a little bit higher, around 6, and it may actually be lower now. It looks like it's going to be lower, so 5.47. So the download definitely faster than the iPhone, but the upload a little bit faster here on the iPhone than the iPad. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and do an Antutu benchmark test. This doesn't support landscape mode for some reason, but we're going to click on start testing at the same time in 3, 2, 1. This is going to run through a bunch of different tests for memory, CPU, GPU, UX, all that good stuff. So I just want to see which one finishes the test first, and of course which one has a higher score. So here we go, you guys can see we are wrapping up. We're at 98%. We're still on the QR code test here on the iPhone. So the iPad Pro definitely finished ahead of the iPhone XS Max here by a pretty good margin, a few seconds. So there we go, we're finished, and we're gonna be about 10 seconds behind, at least 10 to 15 seconds here on the iPhone XS Max. If you take a look at the score here, you can see we got a 554.639 here on the iPad Pro. And you can see the score here on the iPhone XS Max, a 354.692. And you can see the difference in scores here. The biggest one, of course, being in the GPU. The GPU is more than double here on the iPad Pro over the iPhone XS Max, which is really impressive. You can see that the UX is pretty much the same on the iPhone XS and the iPad Pro, and the memory score is actually better on the iPhone XS Max than it is on the iPad Pro, which is pretty interesting. And the CPU is pretty close, 163 to 124. So some very interesting results there from the Antutu benchmark test. But of course, the iPad Pro did win that test with the brand new Apple A12X Bionic chip versus the A12 chip here in the iPhone XS Max, just further proving that the iPad Pro is just more of a performance beast than the iPhone XS Max. It just has more raw power, and that was shown through a test like this. Because I mean, just opening up applications isn't going to give you the full experience. I mean, that is a valid speed test. That is how you can test opening up applications and things like that and testing out the RAM. But as far as raw performance, you can't really fully test the raw performance by just opening up applications. And there's so much more raw performance behind the A12X chip and the iPad Pro over the iPhone XS Max, and it really shines in gaming. Once again, I played PUBG and Asphalt 9 last night on the iPad Pro, and compared to my experience on the iPhone XS Max, it was night and day difference. If you care anything about gaming at all, if you play games every day, I would definitely consider getting an iPad Pro for gaming. It's just a wonderful experience. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is the speed test between the brand new 2018 iPad Pro 64GB model with 4GB of RAM versus the 256GB variant of the iPhone XS Max. Two of the most powerful Apple products released this year. Really interested to see which one you think won the speed test. Make sure to leave a comment down below with your thoughts. And of course, make sure to subscribe for a lot more speed tests in the future. But yeah, I will say that I am pretty impressed with the iPhone XS Max in this test, because the iPad Pro is just a beast, but the iPhone XS Max definitely held its own. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you soon.